Robbery is committed by any person who takes a personal property belonging to another with intent to gain by means of violence against or intimidation of any person, or using force upon things. Article 293, 1947 and 1948, bar. The word things in robbery by using force upon things pertains to the building or receptacle or furniture in the building. The building refers to an inhabited house, public building, edifice devoted to religious worship, an inhabited house or private building. In robbery by using force upon things, the receptacle or furniture from where the property was taken must be inside the building. A structure to be considered as a private building contemplated in robbery must be habitable. Thus, a chicken coop, for not being habitable, is not a private building. Breaking the coop and taking chicken therein is not robbery by using force upon things. The crime committed is theft. People versus Terranilla. A bodega and store, for being habitable, are private buildings. Breaking the door of a bodega or store, entering therein, and then taking properties therein is robbery by using force upon things. A car, for not being habitable, is not a building for purposes of robbery by using force upon things. Hence, breaking the window of the car, entering therein, and taking laptop therein is not robbery by using force upon things. The crime committed is theft. However, a car with comfort room, kitchen, and bed for being habitable is a building. Piracy and highway robbery or brigandage under PD 532 can be committed by using force upon things. The term things in piracy under PD 532 pertains to the vessel, while in highway robbery or brigandage it pertains to the motor vehicle, calesa, etc. on the highways. The word force in robbery pertains to the mode employed by the offender to enter the building or to open the furniture or receptacle in the building to steal the property therein. There is force upon things in robbery in an inhabited house or public building or edifice devoted to worship. 1. If the offender enters the house or building in which the robbery is committed by any of the following means: A. Unlawful entry. B. Forcible entry. C. Use of false keys or picklocks or similar tools. D. Use of fictitious name. Or E. Simulation of public authority. Or 2. If the robbery be committed by A. Breaking of doors, wardrobes, chests, or any other kind of locked or sealed furniture or receptacle. B. By taking such furniture or objects away to be broken or forced open outside the place of the robbery. Article 299. The qualifying circumstances of using force upon things in robbery in an inhabited house are the same as those in robbery in an inhabited house or private building, except use of fictitious name and simulation of public authority. Article 302. Since there is usually no person in an inhabited house, the offender cannot use fictitious name or simulation of authority as a mode to gain entry into the building for purposes of stealing properties therein. There is an unlawful entry if the offender enters the building through an opening not intended for entrance or egress, such as a window. Forcible entry is present if the offender enters the building by breaking any wall, roof, or floor, or breaking any door or window. In some, entry into the building is indispensable to appreciate breaking the window as a qualifying circumstance. On the other hand, entry into the building is not required to appreciate breaking the window as an ordinary aggravating circumstance. One evening, A climbed the wall of a house, broke the glass of a window, and from outside was able to get a watch and the wallet of the owner of the house containing money. The crime committed is theft. Breaking the window is not a circumstance that will qualify the taking into robbery by using force upon things, since this crime requires that the breaking of window is used as a mode to enter the building. People versus Adorno. However, breaking the window to commit theft is an ordinary aggravating circumstances. 1964 and 1971 bar exam. Under Article 299, letter A, uses the phrase, "The malefactors shall enter the house by breaking the window." Because of the words enter the house, entry into the building is an element of robbery involving using force upon the building. In this sense, breaking the window as a qualifying circumstance can be described as forcible entry. Under Article 299, letter B, uses the phrase, "The robbery be committed under any of the following circumstances: by the breaking of furniture or receptacle." Since the words enter the house is not used by this provision, entry into the building is not an element of robbery involving using force upon the furniture or receptacle in the building. In robbery involving using force upon the building, the offender forced the building to enter therein and to take properties therein. In robbery involving using force upon furniture or receptacle in the building, the offender forced the furniture or receptacle to open it and to take properties therein. A broke a window and without entering the house took a wooden chest lying just underneath the window. He brought out the chest to the yard where he broke it open and took away the contents therein. Applying the Adorno principle cited in the case of Juranilia, the qualifying circumstance of breaking the window shall not be considered since A did not break the window to enter the house. However, taking the chest away to be broken outside the place of the robbery can be appreciated as a circumstance that will qualify the taking into robbery by using force upon things. According to Luis Reyes, the crime committed is robbery by using force upon things when chest was taken therefrom and broken outside, even if the culprit did not enter the building by using force upon things. 1982 bar. A entered the house through an open door and took properties therein. The owner of the house suddenly locked the door. A broke the window and escaped with the loot through the broken window. The crime committed is theft. Robbery by using force upon things is not committed, since the window was not broken to enter the building for purposes of taking property therein. Aggravating circumstance of breaking the window cannot be considered, since the window was broken to escape and not to commit a crime. False keys include picklocks or similar tools, genuine keys stolen from the owner, and any keys other than those intended by the owner for use in the lock forcibly opened by the offender. Possession of picklocks or similar tools is committed by any person who possesses picklocks or similar tools specially adapted to the commission of the crime of robbery without lawful cause. The maker of these tools and locksmiths are also liable, Article 304. If picklock is used in committing robbery by using force upon things, possession of picklock is absorbed in robbery, since the former is just an element of the latter. Using picklock to open a locked cabinet and taking property therein is not robbery by using force upon things. To constitute robbery by using force upon things, the picklock must be used to enter the building, and not merely to open a receptacle or furniture. U.S. v. Macamay. In this situation, the crime committed is theft and illegal possession of picklock. 1968 and 2008 bar. Stealing the key inside the house and using it to open the door where the property was taken therefrom is not robbery by using force upon things. To constitute robbery by using force upon things, the false or stolen key must be used to enter the building and not merely to open a receptacle or furniture. People v. Fernandez. In this situation, the crime committed is theft. Illegal possession of picklock is not committed because while stolen key is a false key, but it is not a picklock or similar tools. X left for a vacation, but before doing so, he entrusted the key to the door of his house to Y. One day, Y opened the house with the said key and took properties therein. The crime committed is not robbery by using force upon things. The key entrusted by X to why is not a false key because the former intended to use it to open the door of the building. Hence, entering the building with the use of the entrusted key is theft and not robbery by using force upon things. But the qualifying circumstance of abuse of confidence may be appreciated. 1976 bar. As a qualifying circumstance, simulation of authority pretending to be a police officer must be employed as a means to enter the building. If the simulation of authority was made after the accused entered into the house of the victim, such circumstance will not qualify the taking into robbery by using force upon things. In such case, the crime committed is either theft or robbery by means of violence or intimidation, and simulation of authority will be considered as ordinary aggravating circumstance of disguise. 1992. In robbery in an inhabited house, public building, or edifice devoted to worship, the circumstance of an inhabited place and band is special aggravating. Article 300. To appreciate this special aggravating circumstance, there must be a combination of band in an uninhabited place. An inhabited place alone or a band alone is not an ordinary aggravating circumstance in robbery in an inhabited house. There is no special aggravating circumstance for robbery in an inhabited house or private building. However, circumstance of an inhabited place or a band is ordinary aggravating in this crime. Robbery by using force upon things is consummated once the accused enters the building or opens the furniture or receptacle in the building by the mode mentioned by law and gains possession over the property in the building, furniture, or receptacle. But if the intention of the robbers is to break the locked receptacle or furniture outside the building, the crime will be consummated only upon removal of the receptacle or furniture from the building. With respect to this mode of committing this crime, taking the property away or removing it from the building is an element of robbery by using force upon things, as required in Articles 299 and 302. Threat. Slight physical injuries or less serious physical injuries is absorbed in robbery. In People v. Basau, the taking of the personal properties from the victim was an afterthought. The personal properties were taken after accused has already successfully carried out his primary criminal intent of killing the victim, and the taking did not necessitate the use of violence or force upon his person, nor force upon anything. Considering that the victim was already heavily wounded when his personal properties were taken, there was no need to employ violence against or intimidation upon his person. Thus, the accused is liable for separate crimes of murder and theft. In robbery with intimidation of persons, the intimidation consists in creating fear in the mind of a person in view of a risk of evil that may be impending, real or imagined. Such fear of injury to person or property must continue to operate in the mind of the victim at the time of the delivery of the money. Threat of prosecution and confiscation of the logs by the NR officers is an intimidation within the meaning of robbery. In U.S. v. Sanchez, 2 police officers demanded from a Chinese who allegedly violated the Opium Law 500, accompanied by threats to take him before the proper authorities and have him prosecuted. For fear of being sent to prison for a long term, the Chinese paid a negotiated amount of 150. Accused were convicted of robbery. The robbers, armed with weapons, had demanded money from the female clerk of a convenience store, and the clerk had complied with their instructions and placed the money from the register in a paper bag and then placed the bag on the counter in front of the 2 men. These actions brought the money within the dominion and control of the defendant and completed the taking. Robbery is consummated even though the perpetrators were interrupted by police and so did not pick up the money offered by the victim. The crime is consummated when the robbers acquire possession of the property, even if for a short time, and it is not necessary that property be taken into the hands of the robbers, or that they should have actually carried the property away out of the physical presence of the lawful possessor, or that they should have made their escape with it. In this case, the robbers acquired constructive possession of the money when the cashier placed it on the counter in front of them. A discovered that his stolen painting was in the house of B. A decided to take matters into his own hands, and one night broke into house of B by destroying the wall and took the painting. A is not liable for robbery by using force upon things, since the property taken belongs to him and not to another person. However, A is liable for trespass to dwelling, since he entered the house of B against his will. Entry against the will of the owner of the dwelling presupposes opposition or prohibition by said owner. Entering the house by destroying its wall shall be deemed considered as having been made against the implied prohibition of B. 2014. If A used violence or intimidation in taking his own property from B, the crime committed is not robbery by means of violence or intimidation but grave coercion. If A did not use violence or intimidation or force upon things in taking his own property from B, A is not criminally liable, since he is just merely exercising his right as an owner to possess his property. 2018 bar. A entered the house of B and then took and seized personal property by compulsion from B with the use of violence, believing himself to be the owner of the personal property so seized. A is not criminally liable for robbery, since the presumption of intent to gain is an element of this crime. Is rebutted because he took the personal property under a bona fide belief that he owns the property. A is liable for grave coercion because he used violence in seizing the property. In People v. Puno, accused driver of the victim and his nephew held up the victim inside her car in Quezon City. The victim handed the accused $7,000. The accused told her they wanted $100,000 more. The victim agreed to give them that, but they would drop her at her gas station in Makati, where the money is. The car sped off towards the North Superhighway in Pampanga. The victim forcibly issued checks. The car turned around towards Metro Manila to return the victim to her house. Later, the driver changed his mind and turned the car again towards Pampanga. The victim was able to escape. The crime committed is robbery. The accused for forcibly taking away the victim, even for an appreciable period of time, for the primary and ultimate purpose of robbing her, is liable for robbery. The incidental deprivation of the victim's liberty does not constitute kidnapping or serious illegal detention. The amount given to the accused is not equivalent to ransom, considering that they immediately obtained them from the complainant personally. However, the offender in extorting money from the victim can be held liable either for robbery or kidnapping, for both crimes or complex crime proper. Illegal detention is incidental to the commission of robbery if the deprivation of liberty arose from the transportation of the victim to the place where the victim will be robbed. People v. Moreno. Accused forcibly seized the victim in Manila and brought him to Maykawayan, Bulacan, where he was robbed and killed. The accused was convicted of robbery with homicide. Illegal detention is incidental to the commission of robbery if the deprivation of liberty is made to prevent the police authorities from arresting the accused for committing robbery. In People v. Astor, accused committed robbery inside a factory. Before they could leave the premises after the commission of the robbery, the police authorities were already at the scene of the crime. Since they cannot escape, they detained 21 victims. After 22 hours of captivity, the hostages were rescued. Since the principal intention of the accused is to rob the victims, and the deprivation of their liberty is just incidental to the prevention of the responding police officers from arresting them, the crime committed is robbery, which absorbed incidental kidnapping and serious illegal detention. If the accused committed robbery by band, but thereafter they took one of the victims and detained him for 7 days in another place for purposes of demanding ransom, they are liable for separate crimes of robbery by band and kidnapping for ransom. If the victim was abducted for purposes of killing her and in the course of the detention, the accused took her cash and pieces of jewelry, and thereafter inflicted mortal wound upon the victim, who did not die as a consequence. The accused are liable for theft and complex crime of kidnapping with frustrated murder. If the properties were taken by means of violence or intimidation in the course of the detention and the victim died, the accused are liable for robbery, a special complex crime of kidnapping with murder. In Pablo vs. People, GR 152481, the victim was caught by police officers in the act of concealing deadly weapon in violation of an ordinance and brought inside a patrol car. The police officers frightened the victim by telling him that by carrying a deadly weapon inside his residence, he would be brought to a police station where he would be interrogated by the police officers, mauled by other prisoners, and heckled by the press. One of the police officers asked how much money he had. Without answering, the victim gave his 1,000 pesos to them. The crime committed is robbery with special aggravating circumstance of taking advantage of public position. Accused applied sufficient intimidation on the victim since they performed acts that engendered fear in the mind of the victim and hindered the free exercise of his will. The accused succeeded in coercing the victim between two alternatives, to wit, to part with their money or suffer the burden and humiliation of being taken to the police station. The success of the accused in taking the victim's money was premised on threats of prosecution and arrest. This intense infusion of fear was intimidation, plain and simple. If the victim had not committed a crime, but the accused threatened to arrest him for illegal possession of opium and obtain money by reason of such threat, the crime committed is robbery, with special aggravating circumstance of taking advantage of public position. A. A policeman saw B acting suspiciously and arrested him. A threatened to take B to the police station unless B gives him 100 pesos. B gives A the money. The crime committed is robbery.